Okie dokie, good evening. At least it's evening for me. We're going to make a brioche today for Christmas. In fact, a fruity nutty brioche loaf, because coming to Christmas time, sort of breakfast is one of those meals you kind of want to have it, but you don't want to be having a full fry up or a really big heavy breakfast when you've got a massive Christmas lunch coming up, really, do you? And actually someone like my dad, who doesn't really eat breakfast anyway, he loves like a fruit loaf or something for breakfast. So, if we make a really rich brioche fruit loaf, that you can toast basically, or have as it comes. It's kind of cakey as well, so you could have it in an afternoon tea. It's really, really good, goes well with jams and stuff. But it's a bit of a long haul to make, in as much as we do a very quick mix this evening, we put it in the fridge, we come back tomorrow morning, and then we prove it again, and then we bake it. So it's kind of a two-parter. So this is part one, and it's very, very simple. But if you've not got one of these, more specifically with a dough hook fitted, then I'm going to be completely honest and say this one might not be for you, because otherwise you're going to be mixing for about 20 minutes by hand a very sticky dough, and it's really hard work. That would be my only caveat. Right, anyway, what we're going to do is very simple. We're going to add flour to the bowl. So I've got 500 grams of strong white bread flour, dead easy. I've got 2 sachets of yeast, so it's about 14 grams, 2 of those sachets of yeast. So I'm just going to make a well in the centre and dump my yeast in. That's great. I've got in here 50 grams of sugar. So that's all the dry ingredients we're going to start with. Just give that a little mix around with your hand, with a granny claw. Then what I've got to add into the top of that, if I make another well, is 5 whole eggs. That's a good sound. And 140 millilitres of milk that's just kind of warm to the hand, not too hot, because if it's too hot, you'll scramble the eggs and the yeast won't be too happy with you. So we put all of that in, and we stick it on the machine, and we put it on a slow setting, initially just to start incorporating the dough, so not too fast. That's literally the lowest setting I've got. And depending on your machine, you might need to stop it and bring the flour down with a spatula. We probably are going to have to in this one, because the bowl's got quite an angled side. So we're going to do this for a few more minutes until, I say, all the flour's picked up and everything's incorporated, and then we're going to knead it by turning the machine up just a little bit for about 5 to 8 minutes. Alrighty, so we've had about 8 minutes actually in here now, and if you come and look in the bowl, you'll see as this is going round, we're getting these strings attaching between the hook and the bowl, that dough, that show that our gluten is really nicely developed. What we're going to do now is just turn that off, bring the hook up, and you'll see stretchy amazingness. It's wetter than wet. There's no way you could ever handle this, and that's not the point at this stage. But you can see the stretching as it's coming off. It's like elastic. That's what you're looking for. Even though it's really wet, we can still knead it. What I've now got here is a whole pack, 250 grams of completely unsalted butter, not even slightly salted. This needs to be at room temperature. That's really, really important. If it's not at room temperature, it will not incorporate into the dough properly, and you will be there till Christmas. So this is very, very soft. Yeah, very, very soft. So we lump the whole thing in, no need to cut it up or anything like that, just dump it in. We switch it back on with the dough hook on a very slow setting, and we just incorporate that butter. So initially, we're just looking to get it actually mixed in. And then once it's mixed in, we give it another 5 to 8 minutes again, really. And what we're going to be looking for at that point is to see a really shiny dough, really glossy, and that's what we're looking for. You might well at some point have to stop this about halfway through and just scrape the butter down, because it will probably stick up the sides, which is what ours is doing quite beautifully at the moment. But again, we'll leave you alone for another 5 minutes just to go and set it going. This one needs a little bit more attention, but it's the same. Just let it sit there and incorporate. So let's go and make another cup of tea. Right, so that's been another 8 minutes or so, and we'll just switch this off. And what we've done is incorporated the butter. We stopped it about halfway through and just brought the butter down from the sides because it was making a bit of a mess. And you can see now, if I pull this out, it's such a beautiful, shiny, silky dough that's still glutinous and grabbing onto the dough hook still. So it's absolutely stunning dough. It's so luscious, holds its shape. What we're going to do now is add some flavour. So I've got some 100 grams of chopped almonds here. I use the whole almonds and cut them into sort of thirds, quarters, rather than the chopped almonds. The chopped almonds tend to be too fine for me, and the dough kind of ends up being a bit sort of gritty, really, and you don't tend to taste almond as such. So I've got some nice pieces of almond there. And then in this bowl, I've got 360 grams of mixed fruit. In this case, I've got flame raisins, sort of these golden raisins, some cranberries, and I think there's some blueberries, yeah, just there, there's a little bit of blueberry in there as well. So, you know, sort of Christmassy kind of flavours, but just nice fruits, really. So all we're going to do now is chuck both of those straight into the mixer. And there's a lot here. And all we're going to do is put it on a slow speed and just gently incorporate it all through. They will stick up the sides, they always do. Just give them a shove.
Smells like Christmas.
Yeah, we're not putting any spice in it. I don't want any spice in this, I don't think. I think it's enough flavour with the fruit, and it is a very, very rich dough. I can't emphasise enough. This is a bloody rich dough.
So you don't want to spoil it with anything like cinnamon?
You could.
Or nutmeg. You could, but overdose of flavours.
If I wasn't adding the fruit, then I might add a spice and have a spiced one. You could add some little chocolate chips or something through it if you wanted to.
So it was like a brioche au chocolat.
Yeah, exactly. You can add whatever you want. That's the great thing with brioche dough, actually, is it's incredibly versatile. It's nice and dropped off the hook there because it's full of fruit. It's an incredibly versatile dough. It's just... I'm just going to give it a bit of a shove through there. Make sure it's all nicely blended, which it's not. Look at that. This dough, you cannot work this dough on the surface like a normal bread where you would knead it and work with it in your hands. It's so soft that we're not going to do that. At the moment it looks like cake mix, actually. I'm now going to cling film this tight and put it in the fridge. And we'll put it in the fridge for about at least 8 hours, if not longer. Overnight, as I usually do this. It's now 8 o'clock at night. I'm going to leave this overnight and we'll deal with it in the morning. The yeast will still work. People seem to think that yeast must be kept in this perfectly warm condition. No, this will rise. It will just rise incredibly slowly in the fridge. But more importantly, what will happen is the butter will solidify, which means we'll be able to actually mould this into a tin in the morning while it's still cold before it proves again. If you don't do that, this is so sticky and so fluid that you'd never ever be able to get it into a tin neatly. So yeah, we'll leave you for now. I'm going to cling film this, put it in the fridge, and we'll see you in the morning to bake it.
Goodbye.
Okay then, good morning Stripy White viewers. We've had about 12 hours in the fridge with our dough. As you can see, it's risen up a lot in the bowl. Plastics, bounce a penny on the plastic. It was actually risen up a little bit higher last night, but it's dropped back nicely now. You can see there's a slight dimple in the middle of the dough, maybe you can see that. What I'm going to do now is take this out of the bowl, knock it back, and then we'll mould it up and leave it to prove for a second time. In prep for that, what I've done is taken 2 loaf tins. I've buttered the insides. I then cut strips of paper, one going this way and then one going this way, and I've stuck those onto the butter that was in the tin and then buttered that as well, just to make sure that this comes out of the tins cleanly, because it can be quite a sticky dough. So just literally melted some butter in a pan with a brush and I've done that. Okay, so what we're going to do is just quickly flour our surface. Whilst this dough is now quite firm and not anywhere near as sticky as it was before, it will stick a little bit to the surface still. It's quite a rich dough. Also there's a little bit of flour on there. And we'll turn this beast out. It will grab to the sides a little bit. See, it is quite sticky stuff, but it will come out in one lovely piece. Grab anything that's left in the bowl. It's all worth having. Into there. Give ourselves a nice spread of flour over that, just to stop it sticking. So clean up the board a bit. And the main task now for us is to knock this back and to mould it into our tins. I've set myself an amusing challenge by having one tin that is slightly bigger than the other. So I'm going to do a slightly uneven divide of the dough, but you use whatever you can use. You could cook this all in one, but it would make for quite a big, I mean, if you look at that, that's a heck of a lump of dough, quite big. And I don't want massive slices of bread like a sandwich loaf. I actually want nice sort of relatively petite ones that you would want for breakfast. So what I'm going to do is take this, because looking at my tins, that one is maybe 10%, 20% bigger, so if I just maybe go 40-60 with the dough, cut that down there. You can see, look at that. Beautiful, the fruit and nut through there is delicious. Excuse me. And all I'm going to do is quickly roll this out in my hands. Till it's about the right size, about the right length for our tin. There we go, that's perfect. Make sure it's reasonably even. At the same time here we're actually knocking back. This dough is very rigid though, it's not like a bread dough which is all elastic and easy to move around. It's actually quite stiff, it's quite strange because the fat is set up. It's actually quite stiff and quite an odd consistency. You can literally press it and it doesn't spring back because the fat, it does a little bit, but the fat is mostly holding that dough. So what I've done there is placed it in and filled the bottom of the tin completely. And that's simple. What we're going to do now is leave these to prove. It will take 2 or 3 hours to prove at room temperature because again the dough is very, very heavy. So yeah, 2 or 3 hours room temperature, and and we'll come back to talk about the bake. What you want. So these have now had 2.5 hours thereabouts, and that's as puffy as they're going to get. As I said before, I want quite small loaves. I don't want these to be massive sandwich loaves because it's for breakfast. How do you tell if the dough is proved and ready to go? Well, you can see there's actually a dimple. If I point it out with the brush just there, that was me just with my little finger. I've poked into the dough like that. If it doesn't spring back to you, then it's done. It won't prove any more than that. You've reached the limit. So what I've done, I've got a tray here, and I've just a normal oven tray. I've put newspaper on it. The newspaper is to stop the bottom of the tins getting too hot, the contact heat coming off the tray, to stop the bottom scorching. I don't want the bottom of the loaves to go black. So then I've got my 2 tins on top. Also, the tray means I can move 2 loaves around really easily without having to scrabble the loose edges. Right, these will go into a 180-degree oven for about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll turn the oven down to about 150 for another 20 minutes or so. Keep your eye on it. The first 15-20 minutes at high temperature is to get them to rise and to get sort of the golden finish, and then you leave them in for 20 minutes at a lower temperature to cook them through. Remember, there's eggs and all sorts of fat in here, which makes this a little bit slower than cooking, say, a quick normal bread loaf that hasn't been enriched. So just keep your eye on this one. This is the bit where you've really got to keep your eye on it. If it starts to look a little bit too dark on the top as you're cooking through, chuck a bit of foil just over the top, and it will just protect them from getting coloured up whilst they're cooking out. So we shall show you what they look like when we're finished. Bit of smoke come out. That's the paper burning nicely. There we go. We just covered these with some foil because they were starting to colour up quite nicely.
Ooh.
There we go. What you get is 2 lovely loaves. It's important with these loaves, if you can, this is why we actually use some paper and overhang it, to try and actually get these out as quickly as you can, because they tend to be a bit sticky. I think these are stuck slightly in the corners. We'll just see if we can gently get one out. Alright. It's just stuck in the corners a little bit, which is quite normal. Sticky old dough. See if we can gently release it just with a knife. You see that just flicked out? Just release the little corners where they're stuck. It's loose. That's why we use the paper. It's really important. It smells buttery, doesn't it? You smell that gorgeous buttery smell. Look at that glossy top on it. I should now actually, if I just grab the papers even, be able to lift her out. There you go. Gently turn it on its back. Hollow, yeah? Means it's cooked. Beautiful, and that's what you get. A stunning, stunning loaf. Fruity nutty brioche. A very Merry Christmas.
zumbón, bailando alegre el gallón.